In a landmark decision that will echo for years to come, the Supreme Court has struck down President Trump's sweeping global tariff program, sending shockwaves through the political and economic landscape. This historic ruling is reshaping the balance of power in American governance, drawing a clear line between executive authority and legislative oversight. The court's decision reasserts Congress's constitutional authority over major national policies, especially those with vast economic impact, and reminds the nation that the power to shape such policies ultimately rests with the people's representatives. For years, Trump's tariffs, justified as national emergencies, redefined U.S. trade policy and affected global markets, but the court has now dismantled that framework, signaling a return to more traditional checks and balances. This isn't just a technical legal dispute, it's a fundamental debate about the limits of presidential power and about how much authority one person should have over the nation's economic destiny. The court's message is clear: even in times of crisis or uncertainty, the president cannot bypass Congress to enact policies with trillion-dollar consequences, no matter how urgent the situation may seem. The decision forces a complete reevaluation of U.S. trade policy and the tools a president can use unilaterally, prompting lawmakers and experts to reconsider how America engages with the world economy. Future presidents will now have to seek explicit congressional approval for major economic actions, ensuring that such decisions are debated openly and reflect the will of the people. Ultimately, the ruling reaffirms that transformative policy shifts require a clear mandate from Congress, not just executive will, strengthening the foundations of American democracy and the separation of powers. Tariffs are taxes placed on imported goods, and they're one of the oldest tools in the government's economic toolkit. By making foreign products more expensive, tariffs can influence what consumers buy and how companies operate. Governments often use tariffs to protect domestic industries from overseas competition, or as a bargaining chip in international negotiations. Sometimes they're also used to encourage the growth of certain sectors at home. Under President Trump, tariffs became a central part of U.S. trade policy. His administration imposed sweeping tariffs, aiming to shield American jobs and industries, while also pressuring trade partners like China to change their practices. Although importers are the ones who pay the tariff at the border, the extra cost rarely stops there. It's usually passed down the supply chain, leading to higher prices for American businesses and, ultimately, for everyday consumers at the checkout counter. Most economists agree. The majority of the financial burden landed on U.S. households and businesses, not on foreign exporters as some might expect. This meant higher costs for families and companies across the country. The Trump tariff program was unprecedented in its scale and reach, touching nearly every sector of the U.S. economy. From steel and aluminum to electronics and everyday consumer goods, few industries were left untouched. These tariffs didn't just raise costs, they also disrupted supply chains, causing delays, shortages, and uncertainty for businesses trying to plan for the future. The government collected a staggering $174 billion in annual tariff revenue, highlighting just how significant these measures became, and why the Supreme Court's decision on their legality carries such high stakes. Major American companies like General Motors and Mattel reported substantial financial harm, facing tough choices about whether to absorb the extra costs or pass them on to customers. Many businesses struggled to stay competitive, while consumers saw prices rise on everything from cars to toys to household essentials. The policy created clear winners and losers. Some workers and industries benefited from new protections, while others, like farmers and small businesses, faced new challenges and uncertainty. In the end, the tariffs imposed a heavy burden on the broader American economy, sparking debate about the true costs and benefits of using trade levers as a policy tool. President Trump's global tariffs were justified under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. This law, passed in 1977, was originally designed to give the president authority to respond quickly to extraordinary foreign threats, like terrorism or hostile regimes, by restricting trade or freezing assets. Traditionally, IEEPA was used for targeted sanctions, not broad economic restructuring. It was a tool for precision, not sweeping changes to the entire economy. Trump declared trade deficits a national emergency, claiming authority to impose tariffs on any country, bypassing Congress's constitutional role in trade. This marked a dramatic shift in how emergency powers could be interpreted and used. Critics argued, This was a misuse of IEEPA, never intended as a blank check for unilateral trade policy. They warned that such a precedent could open the door to unchecked executive action in the future. The legal battle centered on whether the president could use emergency powers to rewrite trade rules. The courts were asked to decide if this expansion of authority was constitutional. The administration's defense painted the tariffs as an existential necessity to save the nation from economic collapse. They argued that drastic action was needed to protect American industries and jobs. This aggressive interpretation of IEEPA became the heart of the Supreme Court case. The justices faced a pivotal question about the scope of presidential power. The stakes were enormous. Could a president unilaterally transform U.S. trade policy under the guise of emergency? The outcome would set a precedent for generations. The court's answer would not only decide the fate of Trump's tariffs, but also redefine the limits of executive power in America for years to come. The Supreme Court's ruling hinged on the major questions doctrine. This principle requires clear, explicit congressional authorization for executive actions of vast economic and political significance. The court found IEEPA silent on tariffs, no mention of duties, customs, or taxes, making the administration's legal argument untenable. The sheer scale of Trump's tariffs, involving trillions of dollars, demanded explicit legislative approval. The court drew a sharp line: transformative economic policies require a clear statement from Congress. This decision reasserts that the power to tax and regulate trade belongs to the legislature, not the executive. The ruling is a defining moment for the separation of powers. It sends a message: presidents cannot use vague statutes to justify sweeping unilateral economic actions. Congress's response to Trump's tariffs was marked by bipartisan concern, but legislative gridlock. A coalition of lawmakers argued that IEEPA was never meant to grant tariff authority to the president. The Senate passed resolutions to overturn the tariffs, with support from both parties, but House leaders blocked any real action. Procedural maneuvers prevented meaningful debate or reversal. The Supreme Court's decision resolved what Congress could not, validating the constitutional arguments of tariff opponents. For supporters of the tariffs, the ruling is a major setback, shifting future trade debates back to Congress. Any large-scale tariff policy now requires new laws, restoring legislative control over trade. Just before the Supreme Court's decision, trade tensions with Canada and Brazil escalated dramatically. Trump abruptly raised tariffs on Canadian goods, reportedly in response to a political ad, highlighting the volatility of his trade policy. The move disrupted supply chains and put congressional Republicans in a difficult position. With Brazil, Trump imposed tariffs after declaring a national emergency tied to the legal troubles of his ally, Jair Bolsonaro. These actions use tariffs as tools for personal and political leverage, not just economic policy. The Senate's symbolic votes to overturn these tariffs reflected deep unease, even within Trump's party. These real-time conflicts underscored the dangers of unchecked executive power in trade. The court's ruling was shaped by these examples of how emergency powers could be misused. The economic fallout from Trump's tariffs was clear. American consumers and businesses bore most of the costs. Tariffs acted as a sales tax, raising prices on everything from appliances to sneakers. Companies reliant on imports faced higher costs, forcing tough choices: absorb losses or raise prices. Major firms like General Motors and Mattel reported direct financial harm. The administration admitted that a court loss would require refunding tens of billions in tariff revenue to importers. Trump warned of economic disaster if the tariffs were struck down, but most economists predicted long-term benefits from their removal. The Supreme Court's decision will trigger refunds and lower costs, ultimately helping consumers and businesses. The ruling exposes the true economic impact. Tariffs were paid by Americans, not foreign countries. The Supreme Court's decision marks a turning point in presidential power and U.S. trade policy. By applying the major questions doctrine, the court has limited the president's ability to impose sweeping economic policies without Congress. For future presidents, the message is clear: major trade actions require explicit legislative approval. As tariffs unwind, Americans should see lower prices and more stable supply chains, though some industries will face renewed competition. Internationally, the ruling restores predictability and signals a return to rules-based trade. The decision is about more than tariffs. It's a defense of constitutional checks and balances. The court reaffirmed that transformative policies must be debated and enacted by Congress. Tariffs remain a tool, but only with legislative backing. This legacy will shape the presidency and America's global role for years to come.